เราคือเอ็ดดาสร้างสะพานแข็งแรงเชื่อมทางไปข้างหน้าคือความหมายที่สื่อเชื่อมโยงโลกใบใหญ่ให้ใกล้เพียงปลายมือคือหน้าที่เอ็ดดาเชื่อมโยงโลกใบใหญ่ให้ใกล้เพียงปลายมือคือหน้าที่เอ็ดดากว้างใหญ่พร้อมให้เราก้าวทันจงมุ่งมั่นให้เป็นวันของเราให้คนไทยได้ทำธุรกรรมคำเช้าอย่างปลอดภัยมั่นใจทุกเวลานาทีลงไปมีความหมายทุกสิ่งที่ทำน้อยใหญ่พัฒนาก้าวทันเพื่อให้เศรษฐกิจไทยพังอาจองอาจยั่งยืนพวกเราไม่หยุดคิดพวกเราไม่หยุดทำไม่ยอมเป็นผู้ตายกล้าทำสิ่งใหม่รวมพลังศรัทธายึดมั่นในหัวใจพวกเราคือเอ็ดดาสร้างสะพานแข็งแรงเชื่อมทางไปข้างหน้าคือความหมายที่สื่อเชื่อมโยงโลกใบใหญ่ใกล้เพียงปลายมือคือหน้าที่เอ็ดดา
ก็สำหรับ Open Forum วันนี้นะครับในช่วงบ่ายเนี่ยก็จะเป็นการมาแชร์ความรู้นะครับทางด้าน Cybersecurity เป็นการอัปเดตเนี่ยจากทาง Imperva นะครับก็จะมีคุณการนนะครับจะเป็นพรีเซนเตอร์วันนี้จะเป็นผู้ที่แชร์ knowledge กับเรานะครับการนเวลคัมก็เดี๋ยวจะให้คุณการนเล่าแล้วก็แชร์ knowledge ต่างๆให้เราฟังเลยแล้วกันนะครับเพื่อไม่ให้เป็นการเสียเวลาก็เดี๋ยวขอเริ่มเลยแล้วกัน
สวัสดีครับ everyone good afternoon ขอโทษครับ I don't speak Thai นะ I just come here in Bangkok just flew from Singapore to come in luggage is still outside right so thank you very much Kun Sanya and ETDA to arrange this session for Imperva to talk about data security for the first part of this presentation and then we will have a short break then Kun Paul will talk about the application security after right so usually after lunch is the most difficult session for sure right so because typically I think after I speak for 10 minutes everybody will feel sleepy already, want to sleep. So this session is about 1 hour, but I will keep it short, probably about 45 minutes, right? So, and then please give me more of your attention, right? ขอบคุณครับ So data security is a very dry topic, right? But it's one of the most important area that we should actually focus on, right? So, but before I begin on the data security, may I ask, has anyone heard about Imperva, the company Imperva? Yes? Good, good. Okay, good. At least there's some nodding on the head. Last year when we when heard about Imperva, everybody looked at me blank. Okay, good. So just a brief introduction, just in case you didn't hear about Imperva. Company overview. Imperva mission is to protect your data and application. Imperva, when we set up in year 2002, which is about 17 years ago, we were the first web application firewall, WAF, and also the first database activity monitoring, DAM, in the market at that point in time, right? So frankly, 17 years ago, or even till only lately, people start to talk more actively about application security and data security. But before that, it was always on network security endpoint, right? So this topic become very hot nowadays, right? So Imperva as a company, 5,200 plus customer worldwide. Most of the top bank and service provider is our customer, right? And of course, a lot of people may hear about Imperva because of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, right? So for Gartner Magic Quadrant for the WAF, we have been since 2014 until now, last year, 5 years running, has been the leader for the Gartner Magic Quadrant. So I think probably a lot of people relate Imperva to application security, right? So today I'm going to touch on data security, which is actually half of the Imperva business, right? So a lot of people think that Imperva is a pure application security company, but it's not true. In fact, half of the business come from data security. And how I will share more on how a lot of government, especially Singapore government, how are they also using the Imperva data security solution and how it can reference point and maybe help reference for the Thailand government as well, right? And Forrester Wave and leader parity as well for REST. I think this one, Kun Paul will go over later on, right? So just a marketing slide to start off with, right? So, so now we talk about data security. May I ask here, who is from the government sector here? Or who is from the private sector here? Okay, seem like more private sector, nah? Okay. Okay, make sure half, right? So Forrester research say that as business becomes digital, right? ETDA is doing a lot of digitization. Thailand is transforming a lot into digital transformation, right? Security must become data-centric, which I think is very important, right? So when we talk about data security helps you to mitigate risk the most effectively, right? So of course, in an environment, typically, you will have your network security, which is your perimeter, right? You talk about your firewall, your IPS, right? And then some people even have proxy, APT, and up to your endpoint. You talk about the endpoint detection, right? But typically, you talk about data security, data as in residing in the database, which is the most important thing. Typically, we don't see much people implement a data security as per se, right? And this is the focus point today that we're going to talk about, right? From this website called breachleverindex.com, which you can easily go to the website, you can always see the data breach statistics. Every day, there's 6 over million record worldwide that is being stolen, right? And then talk about 71 record per day. It's a very scary number, right? So typically, we are not alerted, right, until it really happened very close to us, right? So I'm from Singapore, Singaporean, right? So I'm very sure last year everyone heard about the Singapore Health data breach incident, right? Who heard? Who never heard about it? Who heard about it? Sorry, good. Okay, good. So I think a lot of people hear about it. So when that happened, frankly, Singapore as a country that is supposed to implement one of the best security measures to protect the data of the citizen, right, actually got breached. And then 1.5 million record was leaked out. And then within it, we've got our Prime Minister data as well, which is very sensitive, right? So from then onwards, you talk about the government, the whole entire government, mandatory start to need to implement data security as per se, very specifically, database activity monitoring, DAM, becomes a mandatory requirement for all government agencies to deploy. And then from there onwards, a lot of private sector follow as well, right? And people start to realize that, this is something that we have never done before or looked into it before, right? So this is the topic today about this area. And let's take a step and look at it. Why cybercrime wants to get data, right? It's all because of money, right? So the data sells for a lot of money. We know in the black market, per credit card record can sell for $1 to $2 per credit card record. Imagine you have millions of records, and per patient's data, right? Especially hospital patients' data, right? You can sell for almost $100 to $150 USD per record. And imagine how many millions of dollars they can make from the patient's record. So it's all because of money, right? So, and then we talk about data-wise. We take a look back at where our data resides. First thing first, we talk about structured data, unstructured data, big data, and cloud, right? May I ask, who have got database within your environment, like Oracle, MS SQL, DB2 database, or who don't have? Sorry, maybe I should ask the other way around, right? So I'm sure everyone have database for sure, right? And just now I named a few common one, Oracle, MS SQL, DB2, right? So, or even more, right, basically. Let's probably take a step back and ask ourselves, today, data is the most important thing in our environment. Where it sits inside the database, correct? Most of them, most of the sensitive one. Of course, there is unstructured data that sit in the file server, but data in the structured database is the most sensitive ones. And we ask ourselves, because after the SingHealth incident, we visited a lot of government agency. We also visited a lot of private sector, and we start to look at this problem and realize that, when data, which is those most important, residing in the database, do we actually have any security around the protection of the database itself? And the answer typically is no, right? Or some say yes, I have some basic firewall to do access control to allow only application or IP address to come in, something like that, right? But the actual SQL query at the layer 7 going into the database itself, no visibility at all, right? And typically, I'm sure everyone knows, within your database itself, be it Oracle, DB2, or MS SQL, or whatever, right? You have something called the native auditing. Native auditing, which means that you can turn on this native auditing on the database itself to actually monitor all the SQL transactions that go in and out of the database. But you ask everyone, do you turn on full native auditing? And typically the answer is also no, right? Why? Why cannot turn on native auditing? Because the performance impact is too big, right? When you, your database team and your infrastructure team will never allow you to turn on the native auditing, because the database business is over security, right? And without native auditing turned on, with a network layer security device that we think can protect the database but don't understand layer 7 SQL query going in, you have zero visibility on the database data transaction within your environment itself. And it is very worrying about this point, right? So all this data now, because of explosion of data, more and more application is coming out, right? Web application, customer portal, mobile app, for sure, right? A lot of people now using mobile app, internet banking, and things like that. Application access to the database, right? And then we also have got more people can access, right? Last time, probably only a database administrator, DBA, can access the database. Then now, because of the explosion of the application also come to access the database. And then because of the outsourcing program, we outsource to this FM, facility management provider, outsource vendor, contractor to develop the application for us and things like that. Contractor also get access to the database as well, right? So many people can access it. And then more bad actors is coming up, more way that they can sell the data for money, but without any trace, like Bitcoin and things like that, right? Which we know, right? So all these are all the different factors why we should seriously look at data security, right? I think I just skip this slide a little bit more. Okay, let's look at the risk of a data breach, right? Just now I already mentioned, right? You talk about credit card numbers, right? There's besides the money gain, right? That is on the hacker side, right? But for us, imagine if you are a private sector, you are a bank, you do internet banking, you do maybe internet transactions. Maybe you're not a bank, but do internet transactions. Imagine if the credit card information is stolen. It's about your reputation is at stake. And frankly, when a reputation is at stake, it's very difficult to, and it may take many, many years to recover the business reputation, which may take many, many years to build as well, right? So this is a very big risk that a lot of enterprise or government agency definitely don't want to take the risk, for sure, right? And then we talk about employee supplying a competitor with trade secret. This, typically I would say that Thai people are very nice people, right? I would say more better than Singapore people, for sure. So very kind, and then for sure will not want to steal data and then want to leak out the company information while you're still working there. But for sure, if somebody resign, now maybe you work at ABC Bank and then you resign and want to go to XYZ Bank, I'm very sure the leaver will usually take some data together with them and leave the company, for sure, right? And when that happens, why? Because it's to protect your own self-interest, right? Make you more valuable with information that may be useful in your XYZ bank, for sure, right? So this kind of behavior is very human, right? Very common behavior, and we cannot stop this kind of behavior, right? So, so instead of relying just purely on trust, we need to do something to have full visibility and protect our data, right? Make sense? This is just some of the state of the data breach, right? So I'll just skip through some. Why detection is so difficult? Why? Right? Three main reasons, right? More legitimate data access. Again, take for instance for the SingHealth incident, right? It is actually a legitimate account. That means it's allowed to access the database, right? But this account was being hacked, right? And then with the account being hacked, through a number of days, day by day, you take out the number of data and accumulatively become 1.5 million. It's legitimate. So your database, when this account going in that time, will not flag out any error in logging in, login, logout, no problem. SQL exception will not come out, right? So you will never able to detect actually something is missing or leaking out already. Incident overload and alert fatigue, right? I'm not sure how many of you here do like IT security operations or security incidents management, right? But if you do, right, I'm sure you will know, or you talk to your colleague who do, they will know. You ask them, hey, your environment has got like what, SIEM, firewall, right, IPS, all this, right? Every time the security device, if something happened, we'll send out an alert, right? Correct? And you realize that so many security devices, per one security device, the alert sending out is a lot. And many security devices sending out the alert is a lot more, right? Sometimes when you are human, right, when we see the alert, right, you are smiling, right, which is true, right? So when you see that, oh, one day has got 1,000, 2,000 alert, which is almost impossible to look at, what typically you do? You say, I don't need to look at it anymore until somebody complain to me, then I look, right? For sure, like that. And the alert will just go by every day. Too much. That's what we call alert fatigue. Too much alert. And then lack of skilled security professional, right? Everybody is a good security professional, but cannot be well-versed in every area correct? Some people are more expert in firewall, IPS. Some people more expert in SIEM or something like that, but cannot be, or database more expert, or application more expert, but cannot be everything expert, right? So, but sometimes when we look at the alert coming in as a whole holistic point of view, we need skilled professional to actually be able to look at it in a holistic point of view. And the company will want us to be very professional and efficient, but don't want to send us for training, right? Right, ask us to look at it ourselves, right? So this is also another problem, right? Some companies send for training more, some no, right? Expect you to do it yourself, right? So all these are the real problem. Why detection become really so difficult, right? Make sense? And then typically when we categorize the hacker, usually we use the general term called hacker. Hacking into your database, we categorize them into three main actors, right? Number one is malicious, right? Want to steal your data, right? Really planting something within your environment and waiting and then do lateral movement, taking over your account day by day, take out some data and accumulatively malicious, right? Number one. Careless users, for sure, right? So I'm sure that now probably when we have a company account in our account, probably some of the password maybe still call password 123, right? Something like that, right? or something very simple password, right? Or the default password. Some people using the Oracle database to log in, they use the SA default password. Can guess? You Google search, you can find, and you can log in, no problem, right? Careless, right? Compromised users, a lot of time compromised, right? So every time I ask my daughter go back home, don't anyhow click on Papa's laptop, right? But they always want to play with my laptop. And anyhow click here, click there, right? Maybe it's not me, but they compromise my laptop for me, right? For sure. And then I go back to my company using a compromised laptop, but I am the super user admin. I can access a lot of things. And that's how the malicious user can make use of the compromised account to go in to the sensitive database. Makes sense, right? I mean, this is real problem, right? So exactly. So now when we look at data breach itself, right? Typically we will ask ourselves when an incident really happened. I mean, of course, I hope that nothing happened to you all, right? But when a real data breach incident happened, and your CEO or whoever is alert, typically when they will ask these three basic questions, right? Who is accessing what data, right? Is the access okay? How do I respond quickly if it is not, right? So typically I think we should always ask ourselves this question before anything happens, right? Who is accessing what data? Do we know? Is it the application that is accessing the database or the user DBA directly accessing the database, right? And how are they accessing it, right? DBA 1, 2, 3. Typically, how they access the database on a normal office hour. After office hour, do they still access the database? Do we know? We probably don't have any idea, right? Is the access okay? Yeah, maybe, right? Because they are logging in, right? But again, we have careless users, we have compromised users as well, right? And if it is not okay, how can I respond quickly? If we don't have any visibility at all, there is no way that we can respond quickly, right? So this is some basic question we should always ask ourselves, right? When it comes to data security. So what is Imperva data security about? About mitigate the risk of data breach, right? So now, in this whole very modernized environment, right? Government, or you talk about private enterprise, everybody, when you talk about buying a data security solution, is to bring down the risk, right? Because we cannot risk business reputation at stake. We cannot risk people taking out millions of data and selling it in the black market that we don't know. That's our data, right? So we cannot risk the whole country reputation at stake, because if one government agency has got a data breach, it affects the reputation of the entire government as well, right? So we cannot risk. So having a data security solution is about buying down risk, right? Is the main thing, right? And why this is very important. So in Imperva data security as per se, I'm specifically referring to database activity monitoring solution. In short, we call it DAM, D-A-M, right? So just now I mentioned like the whole Singapore government and also the entire private sector in Singapore already now actively implementing DAM, database activity monitoring, right? This already describes what it does, right? So now they even take one step further to do blocking. So if a DAM plus blocking functionality equals to database firewall, actually, it's actually a database firewall. So it's not a normal network-based firewall, but it's able to understand all the different types of traffic from your application going into your database or your user going into your database at the layer 7 SQL query level, exactly knowing what query has been sent over to your database, knowing exactly how many records has been retrieved out, knowing exactly who, what, where, when, how, exactly on how your data is being accessed, exactly. And very, very importantly, don't have to turn on your native auditing, very importantly. So when you implement a Imperva database activity monitoring solution or database firewall solution, right, your database administrator, DBA, or your infra team will be very happy because now you can implement data security without turning on native auditing, which means that their performance on the database will not suffer, and yet you can still have the full visibility, right? It seems like a wonderful thing, right, to do, right? So because of that, we can monitor a lot more. Previously, maybe only 1% or 2% of your database, which is very sensitive, maybe you still turn on native auditing for whatever reason that you do that, right? But you still got a lot of logs coming in, a lot of alerts coming in that you probably cannot investigate. But now with an Imperva database activity monitoring solution, you can monitor a lot more. And for sure, every day will not be a few thousand alerts. It will be something very manageable that you can do. This is the before and after and the benefit itself. And how we do that, right? I will go into a bit more detail. We do via this 3-step: define, detect, and protect, right? So a bit marketing term here, but it's logical about the step involved, right? So number 1 is the define process, right? Let me cover this one. When it comes to define, right? Discovery, classification, and assessment. I always remember this term called we cannot protect what we cannot see, right? We cannot protect what we cannot see, right? If we cannot see or we cannot have the visibility, we will not be able to protect it, right? So the first thing first when we do database security is to discover, classify, and assess. So with the solution in place, you give us a service account, we are able to do a discovery scan of your entire environment on how many database there is in your environment itself, what database flavor there is inside there, what tables and rows that is running, and then within it, we can further classify each of the database itself, which of them has got sensitive data inside there. We classify for you automatically and telling you that here, inside here have PCI data. Inside here, if you're a hospital, you have a HIPAA data or SOX data inside there. And on top of that, you can also add in your own classification, sensitive classification as well, to add it in as well, right? And then with this, you have a full picture. Maybe a lot of times when we go into an environment, a lot of customers tell me, hey, Garen, I only have got 50 database within my environment. But when we put in the solution and we do a discovery scan, we found that, wait, how come there is 70 database inside there? There's 20 more that they don't know that is running, right? So a lot of times, it's because of convenience, we do replication of data to do some testing, right? But all the replicated data or copy data is all live production data, right? That's running in your environment, but we don't know. There is somewhere in that server in the corner at the table, under the table, there is actually running all your millions of data inside there, but we don't know, right? So because all are legitimate access, so discovery and then doing the classification is the very first step that we should do, right? Once we are able to define or have visibility on your environment, that's where you can do the second step, which is the detect, right? So this one is I jump a little bit, right? So this one is already covered inside there as well. So we can do the second step called the detect. So just now I mentioned we can do something called the database activity monitoring, DAM in short, DAM, right? If you do blocking using the same thing, it's called database firewall. It's the same thing actually. And then we have something called the data risk analytics, right? So this is something that we do using a machine learning and user behavior learning as well, and AI to run this thing as well, right? So this one I'll cover a little bit more. So far, I want to stop while I talk too long already. Is there any question, just in case there's any question? Maybe give me a chance to drink water. Any question that you have? Typically, Thai, like Singaporean, very reserved. Nah. Ask question, no question for sure, right? So, but if you have really, after the session, please come to me, right? So, yeah. Detect, this part here, we talk about DAM and data risk analytic. What is this two thing all about? Just now, I've briefly described, right? Okay, you see all these thing, right? You talk about all this fragmented data here and there, everything. It's all about the data and the user cross together where we can see, if we have the visibility, that we can actually see the breach that is happening. It's always found at the intersection of the data and the user, which I think makes a lot of sense, right? So if once we are able to classify and know all your data, the next step is to understand your user behavior. User as in the user accessing your data and the different types of application that is accessing the data, right? That is very important to be able to find the breach or the data breach, right? So how we do that? There's this thing called the data activity monitoring or database activity monitoring. What we do here is that we provide visibility into who is accessing the data and when, right? Protects authorized data access, including privileged users and service account, right? And then streamline the different types of compliance together. Basically, all these are trying to tell us that once we are able to have visibility, we can go to the next step to actually start to configure what we call audit policy and the security policy. For instance, example, okay, I talk about like Singapore context, we call CPF. Everyone, when we work in Singapore, we have something that government will help us save the money in this thing called the CPF, right? So typically, when we go into the account, CPF account, we typically will check, what is the last 15 months contribution? What is the last 15 months transaction record? Because we use the CPF to also pay for the house, something like that. So typically, that's what we check, right? So you see, this example, right? This CPF app going into the database, every time only do a select where NRIC equals to my NRIC and will return the result of the last 15 months record, last 15 months transaction, correct? But this application will never go in to the database to do insert, delete, update, which means that altering the database, it will never do. It always only do select and NRIC goes to something, correct? So once we are able to know first that this database has got very sensitive data, this database is only accessible by this application and not a direct user. So first thing first, when I start to have this visibility already, I start to set up a security policy. The first thing I'll do is, any user trying to direct connect to this database, I want to block because I cannot allow. I only allow application to come in, correct? And further step, second security policy that I will want to define is that if this application is being compromised, example, or this service account is being compromised, going into the database, if it do anything that is altering this table, that means doing insert, delete, update, I want to stop. I want to block it, right? If this application going in and do select star, that means copy out everything and not select where NRIC goes to something, I want to block, correct? So this kind of action, when you have the full visibility on all your data and how the user or the application is accessing the data, you will be able to know what kind of policy, or we can recommend you to know what kind of policy to be in place to build up the security, right? Make sense? Right? So this is something that is at the layer 7 layer, whereby a network device will never be able to do, for sure, right? So this simplifies how exactly the DAM will work, right, in the environment. And data risk analytics. Let me explain this a little bit with an example. Okay, so again, Singapore, right? I came from there, right? So we explain more about that. So when last year, when this data breach incident happened, right? Okay, the government sent out a rule, a compliance, which is that if there is any government agency, okay, that has got sensitive data, and if there is one single SQL query going in from application or user, anyone, going into the database, and then there's 10,000 records come out, retrieve out, okay, the agency is responsible to report to the authority, okay? And a lot of agency says that, oh, this rule cannot apply to me, right? For instance, the tax department in Singapore will say that, how can this apply to me? Every time any query go in, for sure there's more than 10,000 records come out, right? Then I need to stand by an officer, always report to the government, because all query got more than 10,000 records, right? Not make sense to me, right? So, and then of course we use this example, right? As example, right? Now I'm a hacker. I know that everyone will have a policy in place whereby one query going in, 10,000 records come out, I'll report, right? But I still want to get 10,000 records. What I do? I now send 10 query, 10 SQL query. One query I retrieve 1,000 records, right? Then I still get 10,000, correct? I send 100 query of 100 records. I still get 10,000 records, correct? So there's so many different permutations that I can do to get what I want, which is the 10,000 records, correct? So how are we going to write a security policy or write an audit policy to trace this kind of action? There's no way. There's no way at all that you can write a policy manually to trace this thing. The only way to bridge this gap is to use machine learning, right? Machine learning, later on I'll give you some example, will be able to learn the typical behavior of a user, how they access the database, and application, how they access, and from there, find out what is the abnormality, compare with a normal behavior, and flag up to you that this is suspicious, without you configuring any policy at all, right? So this is the beautiful part about the machine learning. And this is also the unique part about Imperva solution as well. We not only have the DAM solution, which is doing the database activity monitoring, we couple together with the machine learning to make it a very beautiful story for you to protect your data, right? So this is called data risk analytic, in simple terms, without you reading the English words here. Example for you to understand more, right? Okay. So just now I already mentioned, right, the who, what, where, when, how, right? Exactly how the baseline is happening. So you see, I think this is very important, right? Once you understand the baseline, a normal behavior, right, anything that deviates from the baseline become abnormal, correct? But if we never know what is a baseline or normal baseline within your environment, you will never know what is abnormal, for sure, right? So this machine learning platform, right, and the DAM will help you establish the baseline automatically without you configuring anything, right? This is the beautiful part. This I'll just zoom through this one, right? So this is typically use case, right? Mention a little bit here. You see all these use case here. Suspicious application data access, excessive database access, which is downloading a lot of stuff, right? Service account abuse, suspicious dynamic SQL activity or suspicious file access. You realize that all these are use case. When it comes to implementing a data security solution, right? Okay, unlike a network-based solution, database security solutions are very use case driven. That means I look at excessive download, for instance, right? So this database on a everyday basis, when a user coming in to access the database, no single user will access more than 10,000 records. This is the baseline. And if anybody doing more than 10,000 or 100,000, 1 million, right, that is called excessive download, right? Excessive access, I want to lock it, basically. I want to alert, I want to block it, right? So it's very use case driven to understand and make your management CEO or CISO or CIO understand exactly what is the ROI, return of investment for this kind of solution when it's very use case driven, basically, right? So within the solution itself has got all the standard use case that's already listed inside there as a start, and you can add on top so that it's easy for you to start like that. The last thing is to protect, investigate, block, or alert. So this is easy. Once you know everything, you will be able to do alert, you can do blocking, you can do integration, the SIEM or things like that, right? So, so this is a continuous process because you need to constantly run this, and this is an automated process for you, right? I just now gave you quite a number of examples, but let's run through the last 3 examples, right? And then we can wrap up this session here, right? I'm quite happy that a lot of you are still awake. Thank you very much for the attention. We have gone beyond 10 minutes for sure, right? So the number 1 example, right, is support engineer select and update the credit card data. Select it means to copy, right? Update means the credit card record you update it inside there, right? So let's look at this example. We mask off. This is a real incident. That's why we mask off the thing. We saw it in customer environment, right? So John Smith is an application support engineer as per his Active Directory. You can see the Active Directory. You can see the photo, right? A number of incidents were detected around John's interaction with the company data. Here we focus on one of it that stand out, right? You can see here the incident, low, medium, high, critical, right? So when you have so many cases, typically people will start focusing on the critical first, because once it's critical, means that something really happened already, right? And then you start to look at high. Low and medium, maybe second priority, right? So with this way, when you have a lot of alert, you know how to prioritize which one first as well, right? Incident description. John, in the event, this date, John was identified as directly accessing business data that should normally only be accessed via an application. You see the few anomaly here. First, only the application accessing the data, not a direct user access. He is accessing directly as well. Okay, accessing directly, he is selecting record out and updating the record. You can see the few data point out here, right? So what it does is that this few thing like only application accessing the database. He access directly. He access directly and he access the sensitive data, right, which is the credit card data. He do select and he do update. All these 5 data points come together, it become high priority incident, right? It's not individual one by one, you have the alert, not like that. We consolidate them together, and according to the point matching, we know that this is a critical alert or high alert. So when you see something critical, for sure, something is happening, right? And makes sense for you, right? So you can see down here, sensitive application content because it's a credit card, right? And doing select, update. Doing to select operation and doing update. Select here, select one record, one query go in, and one record come out. Another select, one query go in, 2 record come out. Total, he got 3 record out of here. And he do an update. Very clear, exactly what he do, right? And then, of course, this is sensitive, right? Client credit card, right? It's a client credit card record, right? And doing select update. Okay, all these I cover already. So, typical behavior. Remember just now we talked about baseline? If we don't know what is the baseline, we will never know what is abnormal, correct? So now, the machine learning will tell you what is the typical behavior. The typical behavior here is that the application using the service account, application service account, PayPal, to access the database. This is the typical behavior, right? And then he is accessing it directly. So this is an anomaly, right? So this is example number 1, right? Of course, there's many screenshots. I removed a lot already to keep within the 45 minutes, right? So example 2, a developer access volume of production data. This is an excessive download use case, okay? And then same, principal, developer, engineering. So this kind of thing is very common, for sure, right? Because within your environment, you got a developer or maybe outsourced vendor coming into your environment, you give them an account as well, right? Right, to access as well. So all these developers are there, but they are not harmful, but it's just that sometimes, funny thing will happen, right? So Laura Smith is a principal developer and a member of the engineering group as per her Active Directory record, right? And Laura should only be working within the database development environment and with non-production database and dataset because he's a developer, right? So he always do testing on the non-production UAT testing databases, not the production one, right? So, incident description. Laura retrieved an access of 11.6 million record using Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, which is a application, a TIC client, from a production database, which is abnormally high because 11.6 million, right? Usually, 2 specific applications would access these records directly. Again, a few data points, right? First, only 2 specific applications will access, right? And then Laura access directly, right? And then also using the SQL Server Management Studio, which is never used to access the database at all before, right? And the 4th one is accessing 11.6 million record, right? So all these data points all come together. It become a high alert or critical alert, like that, right? So you can see here, 11 million, 11.6 million, right? I go through again, one by one. Sensitive content is a bad, okay? 11.6 million records, 2 queries running through. That's what it does, right? So all comes together as well. One screen, right? 3rd one, the last one. A contractor accesses excessive multiple databases. This one is a bit different. Not excessive record, but many databases, right? So, John, right? John is the person. Excessive multiple database access. Interactive, sorry, this one is a bit small. Okay, I read this. Interactive, which is non-application user John, attempt to access an abnormally high number of different databases, 29 databases, over a short period of time, which is 2 hours and 43 minutes. he accesses 29 database, right? And then the incident here, the detail, 29 database access and the IP address and things like that down here. And very importantly, again, the baseline, the typical behavior that he access usually is every time one database at a time, right? Within the 2 hour plus, he access 29 database. So compare with typical behavior is again an anomaly. And this is put as a critical number 1, right? All right, that's the end of the example, right? So, so I have this one last slide here, so that at least Paul will continue on from here, right? In PERVA, just now I mentioned at the start, we do data security and application security. So now I cover on the data part, right? So we not only protect your data on premise, which is all your Oracle, MS SQL, DB2, whatever flavor of database that you have, we should be able to protect, no problem. And if you have the cloud in AWS or Azure, also we can protect as well, right? And using the same solution, it can manage with a management box on-premise, manage both the on-premise and manage the cloud solution altogether, no problem, right? And we cover end-to-end from on-premise to cloud, securing your application and securing your data from outside or inside the organization. That's the whole thing that we do, right? Okay. So again, marketing, right? So some winner, something, right? So this one. And, but I think, yeah, okay. Best database solution. Some of the ROI, why is important, visibility and things like that, right? So that's the end of the session. Thank you very much for your attention. Khop Kap. Thank you very much.
ETDA พวกเราคือ ETDA ETDA พวกเราไม่หยุดคิดพวกเราไม่หยุดทำไม่ยอมเป็นผู้ตามกล้าทำสิ่งใหม่รวมพลังศรัทธา